All right. Welcome to Living in the Scriptures Live this week. We're looking back at Mark chapter 1, verses 21 to 45. It's really Jesus starting his ministry, and everyone is amazed. But you know what's so amazing to me when I read this is in the middle of it, Jesus prays, right? And I wanted to ask you guys, well, Caleb's here with us, but Brian's not feeling very well. But I wanted to ask you, Caleb, when things go well, because like things are going well for Jesus, right? Like everybody's excited. There's people like with a lot of excitement. He probably could have just stuck there and built up a mega church right there. People are amazed. Everybody's looking for him. What do we do when success and everything happens well? Do we pray like Jesus prays? And maybe I should just kind of lay it open and just ask, like, how do we respond when things are going well?
Hmm, that's a good question. um, I think that when, at least for me personally, when things are going well, it can be hard to, there can be comfort. All the fleshly, you know, experience, our earthly fleshly experience is positive, and it's not bad. Like I think that when we're in heaven, we're gonna feel like things are going very well all the time, and that's not a bad thing. But there can be a level of comfort where that we start to forget about God and forget our need of God, forget our our position before Him as one of needy sinners and not like proud accomplished individuals who have made our plan work. That makes sense. So um, those are some of my thoughts. Like I think that when things are going well, the temptation is certainly there to go in a different direction than God maybe intended.
Well, I think I have to agree with you. Like, I think whenever things go well, I think we can grow comfortable, we can grow arrogant. We get, I think sometimes we just kind of forge on ahead rather than looking at Jesus. He looks to the Father for direction. And sometimes just success is not what God desires. And here's what we see it very clearly. Like Jesus wasn't supposed to stick around and just build on the success that he had, started, but was to continue to he was to redirect the amazement. So let's keep going with that. This idea of being amazed, and Jesus seems a little indifferent to it. Um, so what sort of thing do you think um, amazes Jesus, and what do you think amazes us? And where are we similar and where might there be a disconnect between what amazes Jesus and what amazes us?
Um, that's a great question. I think that the first thing that came to mind when you said, what amazes Jesus is I think about when um, he said to the people of, no, maybe not the people of Israel, but he said to, yeah, to, who was it? Um, the centurion. Pardon me, I had a brain melt there. But he said to the centurion, he said, uh, I haven't seen, like, he was amazed at his faith. Jesus was amazed and said, I haven't seen faith like this in Israel in all of my days. Or never before have I encountered faith like this. And so Jesus is amazed when when people actually believe who he is or believe what he can do. And I think his amazement might have been instructive there because here he is, the king of the Jews, and he's come to them, and yet it's this Gentile centurion who is the one who has the faith. And surprising if you're expecting God's people to be, you know, to be right there with him, tracking the whole time. they aren't, and it's the outsiders. And maybe, I mean, we even saw last week that it was the demons that acknowledged who he was and had a bit of an understanding. So I think he's amazed when at the work of God in the people around him, perhaps from a human perspective. I think that he's, and really, like, that's really the key with Jesus is like, do you know who I am? I feel like as he goes throughout his earthly life, there's this tension where people just don't get it. And what must that have felt like to him in his humanity, where people don't understand who he is? They don't believe what he can do. They don't value what he offers. The most misunderstood person in history, until his ascension, perhaps you could say. And so the loneliness there must have been really tangible. And so I think what surprised him, or what maybe surprises him, is faith. And when people, yeah, that's I think as close as what we could get to what surprises him, is when people actually act in such a way that acknowledges his power and his divinity and his character.
And where would we disconnect from there? Like, what surprises and amazes us that sometimes maybe Jesus isn't as
Yeah,
amazed about?
yeah, it's a good question. I mean, the type of thing that amaze us are like, chance events. Oh, that was so amazing. There's all these videos that you can watch online about people doing really ridiculous trick shots, and the odds are just incredible, and they spend 2 hours or 3 hours or 7 hours or multiple days trying to get this shot. They get it. It's amazing. Oh my goodness. I think we're amazed by human accomplishment. I saw a trailer for the movie, coming out. Jeff Bezos, the Bezos story, and a man who built this world's largest company basically from the ground up, and it's amazing, it's intriguing, it's inspiring. People think, man, look what he did. We're amazed by sports players. We're amazed by media in all sorts of different forms. Amazed by talent. But are we amazed by grace? Are we amazed by the things that God values? And it is a good question. The things of this world are foolishness to God, and they're contrary to God in many ways too. Don't love the things of this world. And who loves the things of this world? You cannot be a friend of the world and a friend of God. Yeah.
Lines up with the passage that says, God judges the inward and the outward, right? Like we look and shiny and if it's successful and it looks good but God looks at the heart.
Yeah.
It reminds me of Billy Graham at the height of his what's it called? His ministry.
Right.
Great.
Oh, I think we're losing you here.
Of course, Billy Graham is probably the to say, well, of course it's me. Oh, okay.
No.
I might actually not have a strong connection.
Yeah. I got most of what you're saying there. Just go ahead. It seems like we're okay
How is
now.
that?
Talking about Billy Graham.
Okay. Asked about who the greatest Christian is, and his response was, "You wouldn't know this person. He's probably in some unknown country in Africa, just serving and desiring to please God." And I think that's the thing, right? We judge too much by outward appearances rather than inward.
Yep.
Let's keep going. One of the things about the story was the leper throwing himself, the man with leprosy, throwing himself at the mercy of Jesus and saying, if you are willing, please. And with great risk and really no conditions. Let's just like Jesus do whatever. I'm
Mm,
at your mercy.
mhm.
And I asked the question, what sort of conditions do we sometimes bring to Jesus? And maybe I should ask us, are there conditions that we have brought into our journey? I can think of early in my journey, little conditions, right? Like I want, my life to be this way. I'd like to stay put here, or, you know, as long as there's ring, or I want to be able to be successful here, and realizing as time goes on that it's more open-handed. So what kind of conditions have we put on God?
Hmm. I think that's hard. It's hard to say. It's hard to identify in yourself because nobody sits down and writes a list and says, "All right, here are my conditions," and so, um, like I can't think of
Well, I
anything.
think it's probably more the have we ever been well, I think have we ever been mad at God? Because typically when we're mad at
Yeah,
God, it's because he didn't fulfill something that we thought we should, or he should have filled in. And so like you said, we don't usually sit there and say, "I'm bringing this condition to God," but it's usually
yeah,
I'm disappointed, not just disappointed, but I'm actually a little livid against God for not owning up.
mm, yeah. I um, I think for me, sometimes wha- what comes most clearly to mind right now is that when the path is hard, I don't want it to be hard. Like I want to kind of take my comforts along with me, or I want to have my out, right? I'll commit to you, but as long as I still have this little bit of control, and that shows up in lots of little ways in my life, but and it's become less and less and less, I think, but it still is there, and I can see how yeah, that need for control, so I can make my choice, and then I can flee to safety, the safety of my own desire or my own choice, if if I want to. I want to keep that exit door open, maybe. That's something that the Lord that was absolutely huge in me as a young kid, and I don't feel that way anymore. Not still there probably, but I don't. I can see a marked difference as I've walked with Christ.
That's awesome. I think about like my late 20s where my career wasn't going where I thought it would, where my relationships weren't going where I thought it would. And I remember being very upset that, this was the path that God had brought me to.
Yep.
And, you know, that's, like I said, that as we hold on to and just saying, I'll serve you as long as my life works out. And I would say the same as you, Caleb, that, over the years have just let go of more of that.
Yeah.
Well, that's about all that I have. Caleb, was there anything that stood out to you?
Um, just like yeah, like the coming to Jesus, just the need to come to Jesus and really say, "You are the Lord. Have your way with me." We don't want our way; we want His way. That was something really simple, but that's something that really stood out to me from the sermon. And thinking about with what Jesus brings, okay, the cleansing, the healing, the deliverance. Um, I don't, I want to be hands off. Like I don't want to get any of me in there that might. And yet, I mean, I think that I still am quite in the mix, but that would be my desire for sure.
And I think that's a growing process of continuing to let go. I kind of feel like when we first come to Christ, when I first came to Christ, and it was, but time you realize God's ways are better than my ways, and they're not immediately obvious.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that about my life. There are times when I'm thinking, I think I know better than God. But as I have journeyed with Jesus for decades, um, it just comes back over and over and over. His ways are the path of life. The boundaries have fallen in goodness for me because of that.
Mm,
Not to say that there isn't suffering, there isn't hardship, there isn't some struggle,
yep,
but
yep.
that's part of life. I don't think we can avoid that. But Jesus' ways, God's way, truly the path of life.
And like, and there's a time where we need him to come and deliver us, but there's a time where as we walk with him, things fall away. And I know that that's been your experience, just continuing to walk. And I could attest that too, that it is a way that you walk in and Jesus is with you. Anyway, those are some good thoughts.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us for Living in the Scriptures Live. Blessings on you, and this is life here at McLaurin.
See ya.